If you're building something big, leading, creating, staying locked in, it's not the outside world that breaks you. And the truth is, you cannot build wealth if your mindset is bankrupt. You can't lead others if you're losing your own internal war. So today, we're unpacking the real asset, the most important asset, the most valuable asset you have, and that's your mind. We're going to talk about how to run it like an operating system and how to stop it from playing tricks on you. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and enemies, welcome to LUCCI. This is where we turn strategy into systems and ambition into action. I'm your host, Darren Baker. Let's get to work. You don't need to fix your mindset. You need to run it like a system. You have inputs, you have processing, and you have outputs. Your inputs are what you consume and what you receive. Your processing is how you interpret your inputs and how you interpret the pressure. Your outputs are how you move. Clarity is programmed. Confidence is trained, and peace is designed. Mental wealth is not a mood, it's a method. You can have a lot of income, you can have lots of money in the bank, you can have lots of financial success, and still be mentally bankrupt. You can have clout, you can have teams, you can have titles, you could be running businesses, you can be the CEO, CFO, COO, chief or whatever, and still be losing the inner game. And the truth is, when your inner game is sloppy, your outer game suffers. Your mental clutter leads to reactive moves, and often burnout gets disguised as ambition. Many years ago, I read a book called Psycho-Cybernetics, and that was written by an author named Maxwell Maltz. Highly recommend the read. I probably need to go back through it, to be honest with you. It's been a few years, but what always stuck with me from that book is how important the self-image is and how critical that is as a core to your identity. One of the themes of Maxwell Maltz's book is that we act, we fail, or we win based on our self-image. What's really interesting about Maxwell Maltz's book, he was a plastic surgeon, I believe, right? And what was very fascinating is what he found is that even when he had a client or a patient come to him to get some sort of plastic surgery, let's just say it was to get their nose redone, he often found that even if they got their nose redone to the way they wanted, often if their new exterior look did not align with their own self-image, they were still unhappy, which is very fascinating, right? So even if they got the exterior work, right, done through the physical changes, the physical appearances were altered through surgery in the manner in which they wanted, right? Or so they assumed they wanted. Even if that did not align, he found with their own self-image, they were still unhappy. So for your own self-image, like if you still see yourself, or if you do see yourself as an underdog, as a struggler, as the fixer, if those are core to your self-image, for instance, you're going to find yourself being drawn back to that repeatedly and constantly. That's your sense of normal. And no matter how hard you try to push forward, your brain will pull you back to that. We're talking about a positive mental attitude in a way that empowers you to take control of how you're thinking. And the first part we're going to talk about, or that we just mentioned, was the self-image. And that is how you see yourself, right? So that is the core of having a positive mental attitude. Seeing yourself and you're having a self-image that is empowering. So if positive mental attitude were to be like an operating system, you could consider your self-image to be your default setting. And if you don't upgrade that, nothing else sticks. Next tip when it comes to building mental wealth, I want to talk about another author of one of my favorite books, actually. Author named Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl wrote a book called Man's Search for Meaning. So if you have not read that, highly suggest it. It had a very positive impact on me. And very interesting, Viktor Frankl was a survivor of the Holocaust. And eventually he wrote a book after surviving the Holocaust. And his book was called Man's Search for Meaning, and he is a psychotherapist. And eventually he spoke a lot about something called logotherapy. And essentially, logotherapy is about finding meaning in life's events, life's activities, and in particular, when it came to his experience that he wrote about in the Holocaust, is finding meaning in the suffering. So he managed to survive the Holocaust, and he also told about other people who managed to survive the Holocaust. And the one thing he said they all had in common was that they found meaning in the struggle and the suffering that they endured during the Holocaust. Right? So they found meaning in it, and they found purpose and a greater reason to live and survive what they were dealing with. Now, I do want to say this. Obviously, simply finding meaning, hope, purpose through your struggles or tragedies does not mean that you will survive or you won't have negative things happen to you. Just because they had meaning and purpose didn't mean they guaranteed their survival. But one thing he did write about was that those people that did not find meaning and purpose could absolutely guarantee their own demise. By finding meaning through the struggle, adding purpose to your life, even when you're going through something that is extremely challenging. And I think the Holocaust qualifies as something that's extremely challenging, to say the least. Okay? To go through that, and for a survivor to note that what kept them going, the fuel that kept them going and drove them to be inspired to see another day, to stay motivated, to stay positive, was the fact that they found meaning in the struggle. To me, that is such a powerful, powerful, powerful message that you and I can apply to our everyday lives. Most of you listening to me talk right now are not dealing with the Holocaust, right? You probably didn't endure anything like that, probably, okay? But nonetheless, if you're listening to me now, no matter what hardship you may be going through, think about that principle. If you can apply that to your life and think, how do I apply meaning to the struggle that I may be dealing with? That might be enough to get you through and to find a way to win and to find a way to overcome whatever particular obstacles or challenges that you're dealing with. So when life doesn't change, you do, right? So you can't always change the conditions, but you can change how you frame those conditions and how you frame your experience. Remember this: meaning creates structure, structure creates peace, and peace creates power. Let's talk about another author that had written a book that really had a profound impact on me, and that is Michael Yapko. Okay, he wrote a lot about depression, and I read his books, and a lot of what he said really helped shape how I was thinking about my own life. And again, we're talking about mental wealth, right? So we spoke about mental wealth in terms of self-image. We spoke about it in terms of logotherapy, ascribing meaning to the suffering or challenges or situations that you're dealing with. And now let's talk about what Michael Yapko spoke about a lot, and that is depression. If you lived long enough, you probably dealt with depression. And I'm not saying that you were clinically diagnosed as depressed, okay? I was a psychology major in my undergrad years, admittedly, right? But I'm not a psychotherapist, and I'm not here to play one, right? But if you live long enough, you've dealt with life's ups and downs, and unquestionably, you've had some downs. And if you have not, just stick around a while. It's bound to happen. Okay. Anybody who's been in the game long enough knows that. But what I found fascinating with what Yapko spoke about was that how depression often, he found, was not just simply a lack of serotonin. It was also about a lack of strategy and a lack of purpose. So notice the connection there, right? Like in my last segment, I spoke about Viktor Frankl talking about ascribing meaning to the suffering and having a purpose for your life, right? And the purpose for your situations you're dealing with. Here we are, Yapko talking about depression and how often depression is linked to having a lower sense of purpose, right? And aside from the decreased amounts of serotonin that may be part of the situation as well. But let's just talk about that. not the chemical imbalances, not the chemical deficiencies, strictly having a sense of purpose and strategy, meaning for your life, how that can get most people out of the depressive cycles or significantly decrease the amount of depression they're dealing with. So Yapko, really what I got from his book and his teachings and what I've learned is that most times you don't need more therapy. You probably need more structure and more meaning and more purpose in your life. You got to establish a plan, and you got to start getting small wins that start to make you feel and demonstrate to you that you're moving forward, and start to find ways to make you feel like you're back in control. You don't have to feel good to move forward, but you do have to move forward to feel good. This isn't just mindset talk and mindless talk, right? With leaving you with nothing to take away. I mean, I think hopefully you've gotten a lot from the messages I shared. But I also want to make sure that in these episodes, I leave you with something you could take away, basically a call to action that you can carry with you outside of this episode and after this episode to hopefully help you build more mental wealth, right? So that's the goal. That's the intent. So I've set up this thing. It's just a quick download. It's called the Mental Wealth Stack. And part of the Mental Wealth Stack, it just looks at the many different items or things for you to consider to actually be introspective and self-analyze and look at yourself, right? To determine, hey, how can I build a stronger mind, a more wealthy mind, and become more mentally wealthy? So here's a quick breakdown of the Mental Wealth Stack. So we're going to do an audit on several things, right? One is an input audit. Remember, we spoke about inputs, processing, and outputs. So the first thing is an input audit. You need to cut down low quality mental fuel. The next piece is just identity cues, and this is linked to your self-image. You need to align today's actions with your future self. Aligning today's actions with your future self. Then we have the meaning engine, and this is where you reframe your pain with purpose. And I know we spoke a lot about pain and struggle, but I also don't want to be remiss on this part. You also need to take a look at your wins. Even when you think you're winning or you are winning, you also may want to consider framing that and adding meaning to that. Because sometimes, again, if you don't have a sense of purpose, even while you're winning, you can still feel lost. And then we have the momentum loop. And this is just you keeping promises to yourself. If you say you're going to do it, okay? And that helps you build confidence one step at a time. And then we have the self-image reframe. And this is when you really take a look at your self-image and totally revamp it. Give yourself a self-image makeover if that's what's required. So download that worksheet. The link's in the show notes, all right? So check it out. So closing call to action. So many of you listening to this may be high performers. You're doing great in your jobs. You're high-ranking professionals. You're entrepreneurs. You're business people. You're very ambitious. You're very intelligent. You either have set up systems or you are setting up systems. So you understand the complexities of running organizations or establishing them. Or you're just highly self-initiated, right? But don't forget, like, while you're doing all of that, the most important system actually exists between your ears. So make sure that you have a system for that as well. And make sure that that's part of your foundation. So your task this week: audit your inputs, challenge your identity, and stop letting the old you run the show. And remember, this isn't just a worksheet. This is an operating system for your mindset. This is LUCCI, where strategy is the superpower and mental wealth is real wealth, and you are the asset. Don't forget that. Listen, that's it for now, but the work does not stop here. If this gave you something to think about, like, subscribe, and share it with somebody who's building. Follow LUCCI at LUCCI Systems on Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you're listening, so you don't miss the next move. Until next time, remember, execution is the name of the game.